Do you complain about the things you've taught your horse to do? Most people would say no, but a lot of times the people have inadvertently done things in a certain way that actually train the horse to do the thing they don't want him to do without realizing they've done it. And I had a girl at a clinic one time who swore that her horse would not pick up a right lead, and anyway, turns out she had taught her horse to do the exact opposite. And I told the story at a clinic, and that's what this footage is here. I had a girl at a clinic a few years ago, it was over in Santa Cruz actually, and she said, my horse will not pick up a right lead. Will not pick up a right lead. A lot of times people would think, oh well, he must have some sort of mechanical issue, he needs a chiropractor, a vet, an ultrasound, a nuclear scan, whatever. And I said, so how do you ask him to pick up a right lead? And she said, well, I put my left leg on. So this is really important, Jody. This is like the holy grail of this stuff. I put my left leg on to pick up a right lead. And I said, and then what happens? Do you get a right lead? She goes, no, he picks up a left lead. And so I said, what do you do then? She goes, well, then I ask again. I said, but how do you ask again? She goes, well, I bring him back to a trot and I ask again. I says, yes, but specifically what do you do? She goes, well, I bring him back to a trot and ask again. I said, specifically what do you do with the leg that you put on? Do you put this leg on? He gets a left lead, you leave this leg on, break him to a trot and ask again and he gets a left lead, and you keep doing that and you do not take this leg off until he finally gets a right lead. Or you put your leg on, ask him for a right lead, he gets a left lead, then you take your leg off, break him to a trot. She goes, I think I'd take my leg off and break him to a trot. And I said, okay, so congratulations, you have taught your horse to pick up a left lead off your left leg. And she said, oh, no, I haven't. When I want a left lead, I put my right leg on. And I get it. I says, yes, but you also put your left leg on and he gets a left lead and you take it off. She goes, no. I said, you've taught him to pick up a left lead off your left leg. She goes, and she was adamant. I have not taught my horse to pick up a left lead off my left leg. I've taught him to pick up a left lead off my right leg. I'm like, okay, why don't you trot him around the arena, around the fence? And so she trots him around the fence. So the gate's down there, and we've got a bunch of horses down there. So the gate's there, the other horses are there, so there's a little bit of an attraction there. And she trots around the arena. Is anybody here from Santa Cruz? This is up at Graham Hill Showground. She trots down the far end of that arena, and a horse can trot, or I think Buck Brannaman calls it this, they can trot on a left lead or a right lead. And what he means by that is, when they're trotting, they're balanced to either pick up a left lead or a right lead. A lot of times if you're trotting along on a horse and you know if this horse rolls off into a canter right now, you know what lead he's going to get because you can feel the way they're shaped up. So this horse trotted down that fence on a left lead, meaning he's trotting, but if he picks up a canter right now, I know he's going to pick up a left lead. Left lead, left lead, left lead. And as he rounds that corner and these horses in the gate come in his right eye, right there he's balanced for a right lead for about 2 strides, and then as he comes around the corner, now he's thinking left again. So he's basically thinking left, thinking left, thinking left. Right there in the corner he thinks right, and then 2 strides later he goes back to thinking left. And so I had to trot around a few laps, and he did it exactly the same every time. And I said, what I want you to do in that corner next time, when I say now, I don't want you to ask for a lead, I just want you to kick him in the belly and ask for a canter. She goes, okay. So she trots down there, and as she goes around that corner, I said, now, and she kicks in the belly, and he picks up a right lead. And he holds the right lead, canters around the arena a couple times, right lead. The right lead that he can't get. And I said, okay, break him to a trot again. Good, let's do it again. We did it 4 or 5 times in that corner, and every time he was in that right spot to pick up a right lead, I said, kick him now. And he cantered on a right lead. And I said, okay, so it's fixed now, isn't it? She goes, yeah. I said, so you can ask for a right lead in that corner, can't you? She said, yeah. I said, okay. So go ahead and trot around, and when you get to that spot, instead of kicking with both legs, I want you to put your left leg on to get that right lead. So she trots down there, and as he comes to the corner, he's thinking left, thinking left, thinking left. He comes to the corner, and as he starts to think right, she puts on her left leg, and he kind of adjusts himself, thinks left, and picks up a left lead. In exactly the same spot where he's been picking up a right lead. And I said, see, you have taught him to pick up a left lead off your left leg. If you had a kick with both legs right then, he would have just picked up a right lead. But you put your left leg on, and he totally went, hang on, and organised himself, and then he picked up a left lead. Does that make sense? So you have to be very, very careful, just like you, Vicky, pick the reins up before you ask him to go. You're teaching him to go when you shorten the reins. So you've got to be very, very careful.